So today's lesson is going to be on division. Division is repeated subtraction. So if you take a look at the problem that I placed in front of you, we're trying to figure out how many groups of 5 can be divided into 247. If I use repeated subtraction, it may take me a lot longer than as if I were going to follow standard algorithm. Now, you can definitely use repeated subtraction, but when you're up against time, it's not as efficient. So in the standard algorithm, we have an acronym, DMSBR. In the past, we've used sayings like, does McDonald's sell burgers raw? So you can remember this acronym. Or dad, mom, sister, brother, rover. I also like to teach a song that just is very simple but is very catchy. Divide, multiply, and subtract, and bring it on down and bring it on back. Divide, multiply, and subtract, and bring it on down and bring it on back. So there's things that you can write down or think of to help you remember this step-by-step process. Let's go ahead and get started. So when I look at this problem, ultimately I'm looking at the 5. This is my divisor. And I want to know how many groups of 5 can be divided into 247. Well, with division, we can break this down into place value. I know right away that I cannot take or divide any groups of 5 into a 2. 2 is less than 5. So I need to actually look at 24. Well, if I think of my math facts mentally or write them off to the side, I know that 5 times 4 is 20 and 5 times 5 is 25. Well, I can easily write down the 5 in or above my quotient, but 25 is actually greater than 24, even though it's closest. So I'm going to choose 4 groups of 5, which means I've now divided. And I'm going to take the next step, and I'm going to multiply 5 times 4 is 20. And you've already probably guessed it, I'm subtracting. 24 minus 20 is 4. And last but not least, I'm bringing on down my 7. And the new amount I'm working with is 47. So if I try to look at this, I still have one more place value to go. This one right here. So I need to fill in that place value. So that means that I'm going to repeat the process until that place value is filled. So how many groups of 5 can go into 47 evenly? Well, again, 5 times 8 is 40. 5 times 9 is 45. And 5 times 10 is 50. So that means I'm going to have 9 groups that are going to divide evenly into 47. Five times 9 is 45. And now I'm going to subtract. 47 minus 45 is 2. Now at this point, it's easy for us to say, we're done. And in the past, some people might have put like an R for remainder and then wrote the 2 right after it. But we're not going to do that in today's lesson. We're going to either write it as a fraction or a decimal. So in this case, you would take the 2, which is your remainder, and write it above the 5, because 5 is your total amount of groups that you're dividing into. And 2 was what was left over out of your division problem. So my answer is 49 and 2/5. Now let's just say you want to continue and write this as a decimal. So we're going to back it up. And when you're writing as a decimal, it's very important that you remember that this doesn't become 0.2. You actually need to place a decimal point in your quotient and in your dividend area. And when you record that decimal point, you're also going to record a 0 because 247 is a whole number, so nothing's coming after it. We're going to bring that 0 down and then ask ourselves how many groups of 5 can be divided into 20. Well, if we remember, we already have found that math fact earlier. So 5 times 4 is 20. And again, we're multiplying. 5 times 4 is 20. We're going to subtract. 20 minus 20 is 0. And we have no more that is remaining. So we are done. So not only is your answer going to be 49 and 2/5, but it's also written as a decimal, 49 and 4/10, because this is in the tenths place. Okay? So that's one strategy that you've learned today. However, we want to vamp it up a notch. This is a single digit divisor. We only use the 5. In 5th grade, you're going to have double digit divisors. So let's take a look. Let's say we have a new divisor of 24. That's a lot larger than a 5. And the amount we're going to be working with is 7,592. Now, these numbers do not come easily in my mind, and as an adult, I have to even do some multiplication off to the side. So remember, divide, multiply, and subtract, and bring it on down and bring it on back. I want to place my checklist off to the side, and we're going to get started. So the first step is to divide 24 groups into 75, because 24 groups cannot be divided into 7. So I might have to do some multiplication off to the side. I would highly recommend starting off with a low number, times 2 or even times 3, just to see if it's less than or greater than the 75. So right away, when I multiply 24 by 3, I get a 72. That means that 24 groups can go into 75 3 times. 74 times 3 is 72. And now I'm going to subtract, and I get a remainder of 3. And I'm going to bring it on back because I still have 2 place values that I need to solve for. So we're going to start the process all over again. And this time we're seeing how many times 24, or how many groups of 24, can be divided into 39. Well, we've already done that mathematical calculation off to the side, and 24 times 2 is 48, which is way too great. So we're going to state that it is divided in 1 time. 24 times 1 is 24. And we're going to subtract. And we still have 1 more place value, so we're going to keep going and bring it on down to where the new amount we're working with is 152. Now, I'm already noticing that I'm going to have to do some more multiplication. So I'm going to multiply 24 times 4 off to the side, 24 times 5, and I'm going to keep going until I get as close to 152 as possible. I'm going to try 1 more, even though I'm really close. Yeah, and I found it. 24 times 6 is 144. 24 times 7 is 168. So 168, because it's too great, I know that I can only have 6 groups of 24, which equals 144. And I'm going to subtract. Now, normally we would borrow and regroup because we're thinking 4 can't be subtracted from 2. But in 5th grade, I'd like to challenge you. I'd like you to see this as a double-digit number. How many times can you subtract 44 from 52? 1 time, but we want to see what's left over. So 52 minus 44. Well, I know 44 plus 6 is 50. And 50 plus 2 is 52. So that means that I'll have 8 as a remainder. So I have no more place values. There's no digits or no amount left to divide or bring down. So I have finished my answer, and again, I want to challenge you to write this as a fraction. So my complete answer will be 316 with a remainder of 8/24. If you love a good challenge, that means that you want to write this possibly as a decimal point. So with that being said, we're going to have to look at this as a decimal. So I'm going to make some room so that I can show you how to use this as a decimal. Fractions are easier, but again, we don't want to put 0.8 because that's incorrect. So if you remember correctly, we place a 0 right after the decimal point in the whole number. And if you place a decimal point in the dividend, we want to also place a decimal point in the quotient right above it. We're bringing the 0 down, and 80 is what we're working with. So if you remember correctly, 24 times 3 is 72. So 72 can be subtracted from 24, and we still have 8 as a remainder. Now, if you continue adding a 0 and bringing on down, you're going to continue having the same answer above in your quotient. So the way we do this, and write this or record this as a decimal when it repeats, is just draw a line over the two numbers. So that means our answer can also be equal to 316 and 33 hundredths. So if this doesn't come easily to you, remember that standard algorithm is only one of a few strategies. You also have partial quotients, an array box model that is very similar to partial quotients that can help you with dividing a division problem that is more complex than just repeated subtraction.